I was 26 years old when I watched Marin Solis end a 40-year trade relationship without raising her voice. I had joined the delegation 8 months earlier as a second-tier aide, the kind of posting that exists to carry briefing folios and refill water, pitchers and, if you are very fortunate, sit in the back of a chamber while people more important than you conduct the actual work of civilization. My formal title was Attaché for Economic Affairs, Outer Lane Division. In practice, I was the youngest person in the room at almost every meeting we attended. I had been in 11 sessions before the cartel summit. I thought I understood what negotiation looked like. I did not. The Verath Cartel, they styled themselves a trade league in diplomatic correspondence, though no one with operational knowledge used that phrase, controlled the 8 transit corridors that connected humanity's outer settlements to the broader interstellar market. You wanted to move grain, machine parts, medical compounds, or people between the lane worlds and the inner exchanges. You paid the cartel's toll, filed under the cartel certification, and did not complain publicly about the cartel's inspection regime, which had a habit of detaining shipments for weeks. When the exporting party had recently said something the cartel found impolitic, humanity had been operating under this arrangement for 19 years. The lane settlements had grown in that time. So had the cartel's sense of its own indispensability. The Thenovar summit was called, officially, to renegotiate the corridor access fees that were set to expire at year's end. The cartel had circulated its proposed new rate structure 6 weeks before the session. The rates were 40% higher than the outgoing schedule. There was language buried in the technical appendix. I found it on my second read, through at 2 in the morning, and brought it to Solis the next day. That gave the cartel unilateral authority to suspend any human vessels, certification for cause, with cause defined entirely at cartel discretion, and subject to no appeals process. Solis had read my summary once. Set it down, said good catch, said nothing else. I had expected a counter-proposal, months of careful signaling, back-channel conversations, carefully worded communiques suggesting that humanity found certain provisions troubling, but was committed to a productive dialogue. That was how it worked. That was how it had always worked. What I did not know, sitting in the back of that chamber on the morning of the summit, that Solis had already made her decision. The cartel's chamber at Thenovar was built to communicate a specific message. The ceiling vaulted 40 meters overhead, its ribs inlaid with the amber sigil glass. That was the cartel's preferred symbol of permanence. The cartel's 7 senior directors sat on a curved dais 3 steps above the chamber floor. The delegation chairs, our chairs, were positioned below the dais, angled slightly upward, so that any human seated there spent the session looking up. I had noted this in my pre-arrival briefing document. I had filed it under atmospheric considerations and moved on. In the chamber it felt different. It felt like a posture forced on you before you had opened your mouth. Director Primus Sarath Van opened the session. He was a lean figure with the pale, quilted hide common to the Verath subspecies, his ceremonial collar rising to his jaw like a wall. He spoke for 18 minutes. I had a translation feed running, but the substance was simple. The cartel had been patient. Extend considerable goodwill to the human settlements over many years. Proposed rates reflected the real cost of corridor maintenance, which humanity had never properly shared. And there was, he noted, his tone shifting into something I can only describe as a schoolteacher, addressing a student caught in a small dishonesty, the matter of the Devran incident. The Devran incident was a border dispute, 14 months old, in which a human survey vessel had transited a cartel-registered exclusion zone due to a navigational system failure. No cargo was seized. No personnel were harmed. The vessel's captain had filed a formal report within 6 hours and paid the standard rerouting fine within the week. The cartel's position, apparently, was that this was insufficient. That what was required, here Van allowed a pause long enough to communicate that, he had rehearsed it, was a formal apology delivered by the head of the human delegation at the summit table on the record, a procedural notation, a spoken apology, addressed to the chamber. Marin Solis had been still throughout the 18 minutes. She sat with her hands flat on the table, her expression the particular neutral that experienced diplomats develop, not blank, Exactly. Emptied of anything that could be read and used. She was 51. She had been in the service for 23 years. She had negotiated the original Lane Access Compact, the Outer Settlement Medical Exchange, and the Devran Transit Protocols that the cartel's own certification office had signed without objection. When Van finished, the chamber was quiet. Celeste did not speak. She reached into the document folio in front of her, the same folio I had carried in and set at her place before the session, and removed a single folded document. She set it on the table, precisely centered in front of her, with the care of someone who has decided that the placement of an object is a complete sentence. She pushed it forward, not across to the dais, there was no mechanism for that, but forward, to the table's center line, where the cartel's administrative recorder sat. Then she stood. I had not been briefed on this. I understood it immediately. She did not look at Van. She did not look at the dais. She looked, at the other 7 members of our delegation, and something passed between them that I did not entirely understand, but felt in my sternum. Recognition, a confirmation, a door closing on its hinges with absolute finality. Then she walked out. The delegation rose and followed. I was the last on my feet. I remember the sound of my chair's legs on the chamber floor, loud in the silence, which had become a very specific kind of silence. The kind that happens when a room full of people realizes that what they expected to occur is occurring. I did not look at the dais either. I had learned something in those few seconds about what it meant to commit to a posture. You do not half commit. You do not glance back to measure the effect. You walk out the door. We were in the transit corridor outside when I heard the first voice from behind us. A junior cartel functionary, his tone cycling rapidly from peremptory to uncertain to something that had not yet decided what it was. Celeste did not slow. Our transport was at the port. We were aboard and cleared for departure in 40 minutes. I found out later, from the summary traffic that came in over the next 6 hours, what the document had said. It was not, as Van would have preferred to announce to the chamber, an apology. It was a notice of concurrent withdrawal, separate bilateral agreements, spanning transit access, certification reciprocity, tariff schedules, inspection protocols, and dispute arbitration, all of them withdrawn simultaneously, effective the moment the document was received by the cartel's administrative quarter. Withdrawal was legal. We had checked. Every agreement contained a standard exit clause. Nobody had ever invoked all 34 at once. The cartel's corridor fees were now irrelevant. You cannot charge a toll on a road someone has decided not to use. What followed over the next several months, I was not present for in that chamber. I was present for some of it in other rooms, in other conversations. I know that the cartel's inner directors met in emergency session within 2 hours of our departure. I know that the Lane Settlement Councils had already begun preliminary talks with 2 alternative transit networks. Talks that Celeste had opened, quietly, 9 weeks before the summit, without informing the cartel. I know that the Devran incident was never raised again in any formal proceeding. I know that Van's ceremonial collar was a smaller one, the next time I saw him across a table. Whether the cartel had changed its dress code, or whether he had simply decided against the wall height display, I did not ask. Solis retired 4 years later. At her farewell, a small gathering, no speeches, she had made that clear. Someone asked her what she said to herself in that moment before she stood up. Before she walked out, she thought about it, picked up her glass. I said, they asked for the wrong thing. She drank, set the glass down, so we gave them the right answer. I have thought about that for a long time. About what it means to know, with enough certainty to act on it, that the thing being demanded of you is not a negotiating position. It is a declaration of what the other party believes you are, and that the only honest reply to that declaration is to demonstrate, without elaboration, that they have badly misjudged. You do not explain. You do not argue. You do not give them the apology they asked for, which was never really about the Devran incident, and both parties knew it. You place a document on the table. You stand up, you walk out, and you let them read what you left behind.